Okay, folks, it's just gone 10 past, so let's make a start. VLAN D. Who here knows what it's about? Who here doesn't know what it's about?
Well done.
So, as Dave's video showed, VLAN D is all about automating the cable monkey job. Particularly in LNG, we want to be running lots of potentially complex network setups to be able to exercise the devices that we're testing. We did have a problem quite a while back. In fact, we still have the problem because this hasn't yet been deployed, where if you want to change your network setup to be able to test your device with, say, 8 Ethernet ports, you need to wait for one of these poor guys to run into the lab, work out what cable goes where, move things around. It can take several days for things to happen. There's always a chance you might get it wrong. It puts a bit of a lie to the whole automated bit in the Lava acronym. So this is where we came up with VLAN D. We want to be able to manage ad hoc VLANs. So we can set up, as part of a Lava test, new networks on demand to be able to do this. We need to have protected ports on the switches in the lab as well to make sure we don't randomly end up, say, unhooking control of the PDUs or the main servers, because that would be really bad. You don't want bad things like that happening. It's got to work across switches, obviously. We've got a huge network, and potentially we may end up with things spanning across 5, 10, 20 different switches. The way that we've done this is using the CLI on the switches for now. We support a couple of Cisco's, and we've plugged in using a driver-style API. So, current status. I promised we'd release it before Christmas. And we did, and I did. Just v0.1 was released and tagged and everything with very little fanfare, I'll be honest. It's not quite yet production ready. We have a VLAN D rack in the lab, which is what we're using for testing. I've been running some stress tests on that and finding and fixing bugs as it goes. And oh god, the bugs that keep on coming out. Not in my code, obviously. We're using pexpect and talking over telnet to switches, and that is a lot less reliable than you might hope. So there's keeping on finding weird and wonderful combinations that need of commands that don't quite work. So find and fix them as we go. To do that, to run through the stresses, of course, that means the core of what we designed is working. So you can set up VLANs, you can add switches, you can add ports, you can query it. We haven't yet added the top level, the complex APIs, which is how it's going to plumb into Lava yet, because until the Lava guys get to the point of being able to do that their side, we're not going to try and constrain this API totally. We'll get there. We've got a very good idea about it. We've got design docs, which we've negotiated with Neil and the other guys, as when and if we get to them being ready, we'll actually start implementing. And it's only going to be once we start implementing those that we'll realise what we've missed. There are some speed and concurrency issues at the moment. By God, some of the switches are quite slow talking through the CLI. There are things that you can do to optimize. There are also at the moment concurrency issues. Again, for the very early release, this doesn't try to do anything in parallel, talking to multiple switches. It's totally serialized, which means it works. It's easy to debug things. Once the low-level debugging and fixing is all done, we'll parallelize and add load more bugs. So, we're next. Dave.
Okay, so I'll stand up, I suppose. Steve said pretty much the whole the core is done, but we've got to do the integration with Lava. So that means we need that top-level API, but we also need the work to be done in Lava. We've defined a scoped API to do it, but that's in JSON, which is going away in the new dispatcher. So there's a piece of work to do to maybe redesign that part to fit with the new dispatcher. Steve mentioned the parallelization. We've got the obvious thing to do is have some sort of process per switch, and you talk to that switch. You just say, you do that, you do that, you do that, and then there's a queue for each of those switches. That would significantly increase the performance if you're going over multiple switches. If you're on a single switch, like in the LNG rack, it's probably not going to make a lot of difference. On top of that, we've got a long-term goal to have a visualization tool which could show you how you just basically click a button and it will show you how the VLANs are set up across a particular rack, a particular switch, the whole lab, whichever you want. But that it's quite a lot of work. And I might ask Ed if he knows of such a tool, because that's sort of his area of expertise. And I guess what we're asking you guys is this still the right direction? Based on what we presented in Santa Clara, do you think we're still going in the right direction? Are there additional things that you need or want? We can't commit to, yes, that will go on the roadmap, but we can at least feed it into what we're doing over once we've got the integration with Lava done. So we're going to got through this rather quickly, haven't we? That's excellent. An early lunch.
This is not a session where we're going to go through in vast gory detail.
No, this is not death by PowerPoint. So, finally, if you want to get involved, that's great. The VLAN daemon code is up in git.linaro.org in lava/VLAND. Pull it down and have a look at it. If you think, oh, I can help, great, thank you. If you want to add different switch models, we've only got SF300 and SG300 and Catalyst, haven't we? Yeah. But if you want to add new model drivers, I mean, it is completely segregated, so you can just put in a different driver. That would be wonderful. So yeah, back to you guys. Is there any questions? And what extra do you think you want or need? Are we doing the right thing? Neil, can you?
You mentioned you had 2 models of switch covered. How many do you have in all your racks, different models?
That's it, 3.
Oh, that's not bad then.
Sorry, yeah.
We cover all of the switches that are currently in the lab. Yeah. So we've got one driver model that covers SF models and SG models from Cisco, and then the other ones that we have, which are the ones that we've been really wanting in LNG, is the 10 gig capable Catalyst switch, Catalyst 3750. That's the other one that we support. I have got part way to supporting a random other TP-Link switch that I bought myself just out of interest. That oddly looks almost like they've just cloned the Cisco CLI. I can't imagine why. For anything that exposes a sensible, reasonably similar set of features, we should be able to add support for anything else. But we don't need to just yet.
Does the TP-Link actually identify itself as a TP-Link, or have they cloned it so successfully it's actually a Cisco?
Oh no, it is a TP-Link. They've cloned it and slightly improved it because they took out some of the restrictions. So theirs is actually better in some ways.
Don't say that.
Oh, sorry. Shh. So, Bill.
So I gather that the setup is still relatively slow for a number of reasons. So as part of running a multi-node job, is the setup, run the job, and tear down? Is that like the sequence that you always go through, or do you try to say, I've got 6 jobs to do, and look, they all have the same setup? Don't keep tearing down and recreating between each?
No, the whole Lava idea is absolutely you want to be repeatable. So you set up a job, you do all of the setup. At the end, you do all of the teardown to make sure you're always in a known state. So VLAN is basically following the same model.
Yeah. If you've got 6 jobs that actually, or 6 sets of work to do that do that. That's one multi-node job with 6 nodes.
Yeah, and if you've got 6 jobs that are going to run sequentially, and they need the same VLAN-D setup, you are not guaranteed that they will end up on the same devices because of the way the scheduler works, unless you specifically targeted devices. But again, that would involve a level of sort of interrogation by the scheduler that's probably a bridge too far. And we should comment, actually, how slow is it?
I was just about to say that. So when I say performance issues, I mean, it can take a few seconds per port to set something up. So it's not the end of the world. You're not going to be waiting an hour for something to happen. It's one of those. It's really, really frustrating when I'm testing and I keep on doing an import of each of the 3 switches I'm testing with, and delete and re-import, and that takes maybe a couple of minutes, which is frustrating when you're watching it and trying to debug something. Don't worry, the performance thing is massively not a major issue, but if we end up wanting to do many tests, then it's something that's going to be annoying.
Just a question. So I'm not exactly familiar with the previous work. Is the VLAN-D something that you would run on target? Is it part of the Lava server, or?
It runs on the central Lava dispatcher.
No, it's actually a thing called services, which is just a server in the lab. So we will run the VLAN daemon in services, and all the dispatchers will have a client to that daemon on each of the dispatchers, and that will talk to the daemon and do the work.
So then, I suppose you should be able to do runtime modifications from a test environment if you want to, I don't know, at some point connect to something back to back.
Yes, potentially. It's something that we'd need to, in terms of exposing how to do that to the jobs, is something that we're still going to. We've spoken about this. It's potentially complicated, but you may well decide that absolutely yes, as part of your job, you need to set things up one way, then immediately go and switch the network config to be able to do part A of your test and then part B. That's possible, but it's off in the future yet.
And of course, the potential there is that you mess with something that's not in your config, and you muck up the rest of the lab. So the obvious thing we would have to do is make sure that within the environment of that test, only your devices and their ports were available to you to modify. So that's a design thing which we're going to get to post this, I suppose.
Yeah. That's why VLAN-D runs on a single box within the entire lab. The whole lab is potentially under its control. If things start to go wrong, the whole lab could be affected.
A small note on that: we've got the idea of micro dispatchers, so they will be on their own discrete networks, completely separate from production, and they would only be able to actually affect their own rack. So that's a way of also protecting ourselves against all sorts of other stuff. And we could also then apply specific patches to a particular application without affecting the rest of production.
In the current state, whether we can use it for our testing? In the current state, can we use it for our testing?
No.
Manually, or through some scripts or something like that?
So,
Not quite yet, no. At the moment, all of the testing is explicitly on a separate network behind the test server that I'm working on. I'm hoping shortly after we get 0.2 out, we might be able to roll this out for very, very, very limited access to some of the switches only. It's something Dave and I need to negotiate more. He might beat me up.
So the current way LNG will use this is we'd ask you to basically change the topology. You'll run the script, it'll be changed, and then we can carry on and launch our...
Which is ideal, that would be fine. So once we've got 0.2, that's when we can start doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, so one of the things I need to talk to you about, Mike, completely separate to this, is we're actually thinking of making the LNG rack a micro dispatcher, so that it is completely separated and protected from the lab. So you can do what you like in there, and we go, fine. Oh, it's broken? Yeah.
So talking about 0.2, I was hoping I would have had it released last week, and then crap happened, so it's not there yet. Really, I want to try and get it released, and so I'm going to be demoing on top of that on Friday before I go away for a month. So, Mike again. Absolutely.
So,
Install and depart.
Yes.
what question am I going to ask you now?
When can you have it?
No.
Go on.
vSwitch. So that we can eat our own dog food and have ODP under vSwitch and be our own switch.
I've looked at this briefly, and absolutely, Open vSwitch should be perfectly easy to support. It was something I started looking at again, and for background for the people, Mike has been asking me about this since about October. What we'd love to do is to be able to do everything using LNG work. So have Open vSwitch running on top of ODP, and then have VLAN-D running on top of Open vSwitch, so we can actually manage our own stuff. And that would be absolutely awesome. I wish I'd had more time and I hadn't been so distracted. What I've done for now, and we mentioned about virtualization, visualization and stuff earlier, is I've put Open vSwitch support and visualization in as GSOC projects, or suggested GSOC projects. So they're really good things that some bright, enthusiastic student might be able to do for us. And they might even fix some of my code.
There won't be any bugs in your code by then, Steve.
This is to Dave and Neil. So, apart from LNG, is anybody else interested in this?
Yes.
Who?
I can't tell you.
So I want
Enterprise
to push
Group.
it hard. But they want
Enterprise
it as
Group.
well?
Yeah. So it's not just an LNG thing. I mean, there are obvious needs within LNG, but if you think about enterprise as well, and if you think about like OpenStack testing, where you need to set up VLANs on the separate interfaces, that's the sort of thing. So LEG are also part of this.
So if you're looking for, you have the what else do we need want. I mean, once VLAN-D is like all signed, sealed, and delivered, the next step, logical evolution would be to extend it to full SDN support. Okay, so you could actually set up tunnels.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The other things we've been asked for in the past, so other people don't ask for it right now, is at the moment this is also port-based VLANs. That's not going to work once you have lots of VMs running, because of course at that point they're sharing ports. We'll need to expand some of what we've done. The core design is cool, but we'll need to expand how it works to do that.
So that means, for example, you can't run a fast model in a VLAN test because it's a virtual machine. There's no specific port it's talking to. I mean, there is, but it's not. That's the server it's running on rather than the model itself, which has a completely separate.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
VMs is one of the reasons why you go SDN, because you're trying to do it with port multiplexing.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a port forwarding. Sorry, no, that was yesterday's. This is a port-based. I've gone back a day. Port-based at the moment. The idea of a MAC address-based one, we discussed it, we talked about what we could do, but we decided that just to get us off the ground, and particularly for the needs of LNG, we needed to go this way.
It also means that in testing, you're not going to be able to go for the simple multi-node test that is common in Lava, which is 2 KVMs. It's not going to happen. You're going to have a device-based test as your initial.
Exactly. Now, I said Tyler asked, actually at the last Connect, whether or not we'd be able to support things like, let me how to describe it. Basically, a multiple VLAN setup that's actually dynamic during your test. I mean, Cyprian asked about this as well. One of the issues in the lab design at the moment is if you want to do things with VLANs, if you want to be able to do complicated network setups, you've always got to have an extra interface which is always going to be on the lab network, and so is never going to be part of the rest of your test. So that's why, so for all of our devices, we've got extra little USB Ethernets attached, just so we can always have that extra interface to make sure. given time, and there will be a lava component to this as well, which is why Neil is looking worried. We may be able to, well, we're expecting to be able to add support for set up the first VLAN, which is actually to make sure that you're connected to all the lava server and everything. Go and do all of your installation of your image onto Flash, get everything running. Wait for the signal from your test images to say, I'm ready. Then we can unhook all the networking, plug it all together, hope it all comes up again, do your test, potentially switch 2, 3, 4 more times during your test, if depending on how you want to run things, and finally at the end, once you've finished, then switch back to the main lava, lava lab network, so you can do tear down and installation for the next test.
Right, 2 things on that. Those of you who have had any dealings with the new dispatcher will know that that is going to be a protocol within the refactoring, and there's no other way of doing that. That also does raise the possibility that you can do this outside the test definition, outside the test image stuff, which is important. The second part, I'm going to play devil's advocate here because I can, because I got the microphone.
Switch it off.
The elephant in the room, as far as I'm concerned, is Android. Is that actually going to be, because at the moment, all of the Android stuff, a lot of it's going to be across multi-node and things like that, and then you're doing it with the KVM.
I think you
so
mean...
the KVM is going to be on the wrong network.
Good question.
Because you can't change the KVM because you're port-based.
Oh, yeah, okay, so until we get MAC address-based VLAN, then that's addable.
I just wanted everybody was aware that because of the way that Android needs to work.
And I think you mean Linaro confectionery release, not Android. Yeah, so there are going to be cases that for the port forwarding daemon as it stands. Sorry.
What?
The VLAN daemon as it stands, going back to yesterday. It will not. It won't cover every single possible case. It will later. Well, it will cover more cases.
We're heading that way.
We're heading that way, yeah. Any more questions?
You mean to say from 0.2 onwards, we can start using it?
Yeah.
So with your help.
Yes. To begin with, you will still be instructing the cable monkeys, but we won't actually be pulling cables.
Yeah. So
with the VLAN monkeys now.
Sure. Yeah. So once we get to that stage, it shouldn't be more than maybe a 5 or 10 minute job for people to go through, verify exactly what they need to do, and to generate the command lines needed through the admin interface to go and move things, instead of physically going into the lab, fighting through the nest of cables and whatever. So that's where we want to get to very soon.
It's a decent proving ground for VLAN itself.
And additionally, we had the advantage when we moved the lab that I've created these little forms that Steve's very familiar with, that every time we racked something up, anything, we have mapped where its Ethernet ports are mapped, or which are plugged into which switch and which port on that. So we've actually mapped the lab completely ready for the VLAN daemon.
That mapping is eventually going to be actually inside the a database that can be queried. And
that's what it will be, because that's the import thing, where you say, this is the topology of my switch. Boom! It takes a few minutes, as Steve said, but So what we'll do with the LNG rack, we've got to verify that the documentation we have, it's all in a spreadsheet, which is only very closely viewable. Basically by the lab team and Steve, where all the ports are. We've got to absolutely verify the data we've recorded is 100%, because obviously when you're re-racking, you write something down, you might write it in the wrong column, because I logged the PDUs, the switch, and the serial console, and everything was on this form, and it is just handwritten. There's
So the chances are there'll be mistakes, and of course we'll need to absolutely double verify that all of that is correct, because again, if you get halfway through your test setup and you tell a switch to say to turn one of its ports from trunk mode to access mode, and it's on this VLAN only, and then suddenly, oh, it stops talking to you because you've just disconnected it from the rest of the network. This is a bad thing.
Traditionally, LNG is communicated to you via that great big diagram we have. If it's now a table, how do the members and the assignees visualize what's connected where to even know what they want to tell you?
Right, so I have an intention to document every single MAC address in a table for every single device. So it'll be device, list of MAC addresses. And in fact, we've got most of that in the spreadsheet now. So what you'll do is you'll say, it goes device MAC address Ethernet port, device MAC address Ethernet port, where they're mappable, because for the generators they're not, because they come up in a different order each time. So you will be able to say, I need this MAC address connected to this. So we will also document which one is the main lab interface. Although strictly speaking, that doesn't matter. If it comes up as ETH1, you can still ping the lab. It doesn't matter. So yeah, so you would go through. You won't change the spreadsheet. You'll.
I think Mike's point is people deal with pictures better than reams of data.
Yeah, except when you're in the back of the rack going, hold on, what's that?
Possibly, if you've got it in some sort of database, I don't know, Gnuplot, there must be some tool that can go through and just draw a box and give it a label keystone and connect it to something.
Yeah, apparently so.
The packet tracer application that I was showing you, you can change it to rack mode and it draws it all in a rack.
Cool. Use what he said.
It's a Cisco packet tracer. Yeah.
One other question. Sometimes with the networking tests, whatever we do there, we might play with the MAC address. So just consider that. Actually, with what I've been running lately was that with the ODP Keystone implementation, you need to provide a hard-coded MAC address so that it gets to ODP. So you might want to run some tests with that MAC address and then do some verification with the real MAC address, and you might want to be doing promiscuous mode and capture everything.
You're making my head hurt now.
I have to. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Please mail us that as a warning, as it's something we're going to have to consider later. Of course, one of the things I guess we're going to have to then support is when we switch to MAC-based filtering, we'll have to allow you to tell us what the MAC is going to be, and potentially several MACs, so we can deal with several different things.
That's one of the reasons for doing SDA.
Well, yeah.
They completely divorce those. They're separate namespaces. He can have whatever he wants.
Can you have a mixed model, either Mac, either port, or choose between them?
I don't see why not yet. I may cry about saying that later, though.
Say as a cynical point, I think having port-based VLAN support left in there for all eternity would be a good way and good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because at some point you will end up with something that will fundamentally break, and that port-based will always work.
Absolutely, and we have that that interesting issue that we highlighted in Santa Clara, in Berlin, that you get some really interesting devices which have two interfaces with the same MAC address.
On deals.
Oh no, they're not a member anymore. And sometimes you'll get other devices where you've got two of them and they've got the same MAC address. So when you're completely port-based, that really helps. It's for the virtual devices that the MAC address, and for things that's like Cyprian was saying.
So, of course, we did think about this when we were mapping the lab, and for those that some of the devices may have the same MACs, we explicitly made sure that we got a unique way of identifying each interface into that database. So we should be able to pass that through into the test shell, so that the tests running on each device can then also get told which interface corresponds to which connection that they're expecting. So you'll even be given the VLAN name, potentially, so you can actually do the right thing. Of course, there's no point setting up complicated, having your device on 8 different VLANs if you then don't know which interface goes where.
I was thinking maybe going back to vSwitch again, for visualized tests, you might be able to have a vSwitch, open vSwitch in there, and that to do the tagging itself, the VLAN tagging itself.
Yes, that's a good idea.
I mean, it's still not immediately doable because there's a bit more stuff that you need to add to your API so that it knows that there might be a vSwitch after the physical switch, but at least there's a possibility.
I think this is what that's leading towards. You said email us. We have a private mailing list at the moment. It might be time to think about a public mailing list for VLAN-D so that people can start contributing, or make the one that we've got public, yeah. So that's an action on me to go back to make that public and let everybody know about it.
Yeah, the other thing that we're missing, and this is me, is we have next to no documentation about this yet. There's no homepage or anything because, hell, we've been doing, like early mode, just get a core working. Maybe while I'm away, Dave might even do some of this. Maybe not. But we'll get some wiki pages written up, and we'll get some more documentation so you can get an idea of what we have planned, and that would also be a good place to put in, extra ideas on what you're going to want. Thank you, Rosh.
Okay. Are we? Any more questions?
Any more comments? Any more ideas? Does what we're doing sound useful for people?
Yes. How scary is it?
Very. So I will make a comment on the implementation. This is all in Python, which I'm getting more and more hateful of by the day. The fun thing is that, I'll tell you, is not just I'm finding bugs in the code I've written or even the libraries I'm using. At one point in testing, I managed to get a switch to crash and reboot just by talking through its CLI, and that scared me. I'm seeing occasional points where we're talking over Telnet. We'll be adding SSH support as well. But talking over Telnet to a switch, and in the middle of a complicated sequence of commands, we've sent 100 commands, and then partway through number 101, it just disconnects and it drops the connection. That kind of thing is becoming a real pain in the ass to deal with. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. As Bill says, we've created a switch test tool. So one thing that we're going to be pushing to go through is make sure. I think Dave's done this once, but before we actually install this more widely, we're going to make sure that all of the firmwares are up to date on all the switches and all that kind of thing.
That is actually happening a week after next, because when we moved, we just needed to get the lab back online. So we're actually swapping out all the 10100s with 1 gig switches. There's a couple of 10100s still left, and updating all the firmware and bootloaders to the latest. So that should help get rid of any anomalies.
Cool. So I'm glad people find this interesting, and like I said, watch this space. There's still more coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for coming. And thanks for your input.
Yeah, thanks.